I love the local church.
Right.
But a lot of what you've been talking about and what we talked about offline is this idea that, man, like the model of the seeker friendly, the model of the big mega church, you think is fading in a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you know, the interesting, like when Blockbuster was going down, the moment Blockbuster started going down, it was at its peak. And so financially, if you look up the whole time lapse thing of Blockbuster things and Netflix, by the time that Blockbuster was noticing it financially, it had already started to decline,
and it was too late.
It was too late. And so I think that so of course there are churches that are still successful in that, but I think the cat's out the bag. The trend's gone. Even recent events, it's like, bro, the whole idea of like seeker sensitive vanilla, we're not going to address stuff. Even like that person not talking in the live stream is so indicative of that culture of like, and I'm like, people don't have tolerance for that anymore. They want New Testament pastor, New Testament Christian approach to cultural issues, and they want clarity. And so, yeah, man, I honestly think it's done for. And I would even say you can look at, you know, churches like Life Church and Church of the Highlands, where I have a lot of friends and know the teams there. You be shocked at some of the shifts and things they're changing to try to be like, yo, we're trying to be something different, because this is literally, I heard Chris Hodges. It was just a group of like 20 of us with him. And he was talking about like, yo, we're about to start telling like our lighting people to start programming less lights. Like, just, we're trying to like really.
Oh, all the Orthodox and the Catholics are like, you guys like your laser shows.
You know? Hey, well, y'all like them gold robes. So what are we talking about? So
that's interesting. So you're getting this now. Let me ask you this. Do you think this is more of a structural issue within what we would call the seeker model? Of like, we're not going to talk about any hot topic issues, abortion, gay, trans, none of that's going to get talked about. Anything culturally relative to of Charlie Kirk, we're not going to talk about that. Do you think that it's that model, or do you think it's a bigger issue with mega churches in general?
Well, it's a good question. I would say that those are two ideas that probably are worth talking about separately, but then at the same time they're going to meet each other at a head. Meaning, I don't think that people inherently have a problem with a large church. I think even in New Testament church, we see explosive growth, and even in early Acts, one of the greatest moments of true multiplicative leadership was with the deacons, where and you start to see these roles form. And so I don't think that it's necessarily about the church just getting smaller. I think it's just making sure that we can answer this question. And I think this is honestly like one of the most pressing questions for Christians anywhere is, what is church for? Like what are, and a lot of the modern seeker sensitive movement has gotten really popular being like, we are the church and the church and the church and the church. And that's cool. But like, I think, what is Sunday for? What is our corporate gatherings for? And who is it for? I think that's the big question right now. 15 years of youth ministry in 2 large churches I've been a part of, and still get to speak at these large youth gatherings. Let me tell you one thing that's going to happen. The Holy Spirit's going to move. People are going to respond. God's presence is going to do God's presence. People are going to like respond to Jesus. And so I would even say like some of this whole Gen Z revival thing, I'm not skeptical. I'm not skeptical on if it's authentic. I'm skeptical on if it will last. And I don't mean that from a sense of, man, they're doing something wrong. I'm asking the question, are we coming around this revival? Are we deconstructing it and taking it apart to know why is it working and what's happening? So for instance, I was just in England for 2 weeks, and I was interviewing a lot of pastors to ask about this Gen Z revival and awakening in England. The vast majority of pastors who don't know each other were saying, I was like, what happened? And they're like, we don't know. The way they describe it is a decentralized move of God that the church is trying to catch up to. Meaning God's doing something, and thank God people are going to his church, which is, I think, exactly what the Spirit will do. He'll send people to his church. And so all this revival without discipleship, though, is not going to go anywhere. And so a lot of people defend, seeker-sensitive movement and attractional church movement. Look at all the fruit, look at all the fruit, look at all the fruit. The fruit I see is every report Barna takes. The standard of young people's biblical worldview continues to plummet. Gen Z's at 4%. And we've got YouTube, we've got TikTokers, we've got our boy Forrest out there, we've got Jelly Roll coming to cry. only 4% of Gen Z have a biblical worldview.
Yeah, and this is where I go back to like the people that watch this channel. Like man, I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad you're watching. But revival is not going to happen on a screen. Yep. It's not going to happen in an arena with Forrest. It's not going to happen in a stadium with Brandon Lake and Phil Wickham. It's going to happen in your living room. Yeah, it's going to happen when you, especially the older saints that watch this channel, the mature saints. I want to be careful. The mature saints, that you guys have your own home. You're doing well. You're in a solid place in your marriage. You're in a solid place in your finances. When you guys open up your homes and say, "Hey, I want to bring in these folks, these young men that are showing up to church, record-breaking, first time in history, modern history. There's more young men coming to church than young women. Right? When you guys start opening up your home and saying, "Hey, I want to do life with these folks," and it doesn't have to be you're gonna get the house perfect. You're gonna have dinner. Yeah. They just want to be around. Yes. They just want to be around. They just want to hang. They want to see you as a father. They want to see you as a spouse. They want to see you as a dad, as a mom. They want to be around and do life with people.
And they want to open the Bible, I think.
And they want to open the Bible. And so I think like revival happens at dinner tables. Revival happens in circles. Revival happens in your living room. All of this and church on Sunday, like that all of that is great. Yeah. But I'm really like pushing for people. I mean, I have a whole chapter in Godly Ambition dedicated to like the local church. Yeah. I'm a byproduct of the local church, a flawed local church. Yeah. A local church that had issues. But man, I wouldn't be here if dudes didn't open up their lives to me. Right. You know, and so like that's what I'm hoping that people get a hold of is like, if you're not in the local church, get in the local church. Yeah. If you're in the local church, open up your home. Start meeting those people on a Sunday and say, "Hey, I wanna come over, come hang out." And I think that's where discipleship happens. I think because it's like I've never discipled somebody and say, "I am your disciple." Yeah, like it's never been like that. It's always been life on life, hanging out and walking through the scriptures, and then eventually, much of that becomes caught. Yeah, that is taught, but some of it is caught and not taught.
But let me give you my perspective on Gen Z, because I get what you're saying. Like you don't want people to. There is that dude who like walks up to you and be like, "Do you know the prophetic revelation of Ezekiel 38. Yeah. And you're like, bro, I don't know you know? Yeah. And we don't want to be that guy lording over it. Yeah. But I do think that I do want to encourage the mature saints, even if you're like 25, but you've been following Jesus for a while. I do think there is an openness in the world where I think that you should kind of formalize it. Like, I think people would be receptive to some level of formalizing it, being like, "Hey, I would love to bring you on a discipleship journey. Like, I would love to I would love to help form you. I would love to be one of the mentors." Like, I don't think, like, there are some people you have to build relationship and build equity, and there's some but I just want to encourage someone listening to this. There are some people in your life that you don't have to, like, there needs to be no like introduction other than they're ready, and you just go, "Hey, do you want to grow in your faith? I can teach you." That's what that's like good. Paul, one of the things I like about Paul is just like, he's not afraid to like flex his credentials a bit. Yep. And I just want to encourage mature Christians. Yes. There is an appropriate way to flex your spiritual credentials that I think is attractive to new Christians. This is the reality. Whatever the church is silent on, social media will be loud about. Whatever someone doesn't get taught at church, they will learn from culture. That's good. Period.
That's good.
And so this is what I tell pastors all the time. I just go, I'm not saying you need to go make a political YouTube. I don't even know how every church should carry this out. And I think there's lots of faithful executions of it. All I know for certain is that if they're not learning about it within God's church, it will be formed from somewhere else. And then you say, well, they should learn from their parents. Who's teaching their parents? Because even millennials only had, in that same Barna stat, they only had a 33% biblical worldview. And so who's teaching them? And I think there's this idea that there's this magical place where Americans are like transmitted like a basic understanding of the Bible, and that's just not true. And so even like, bro, you know what? When I preach and post to Gen Z, the topics that pop off the most, like the wrath of God, because it contextualizes the grace of God. And if you just get up there and you like sing Reckless Love, shout out Corey, you sing Reckless Love to like Gen Z kids are like, of course everyone loves me. Yeah. Everyone should love me. We all love each other, right? I'm special. Yeah. I'm great. But you get up there and one of my favorite messages to preach is about how Jesus on Palm Sunday, that is the same sequence of events as Jesus flipping the tables. So this like super like, Maverick City worship, upper room moment at the gates leads with Jesus flexing on the Romans, by the way, and everyone mimicking a conquering king entering, the city. And then he gets there and Jesus doesn't hug everyone. He doesn't say, it's okay. How are you feeling? He flips those tables. And in preaching that kind of sovereignty of God, the sanctity of his word, it does something to him. And then when you at the very end, you hit him with and that same God calls you friend. That same God died for you.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. And I think you can see this in a lot of teachers that are resonating. JP Precluded, he's talking about stuff,
Yeah.
And I think that the churches that don't will become irrelevant, which is hilarious because many of those churches that don't talk about cultural subjects were the ones that once prided themselves on being the most relevant. Do you know Brady Shearer at all? I don't know him, but he and I interact sometimes on Instagram. He posted a really good guide on why and how and what things churches should respond to. And one of the things he said is if it's something that impacts locally. And so I think that Charlie's question to Stephen Furtick was one that I imagine many people that go to Elevation asked. And I think it's a very fair question because Elevation didn't just talk about George Floyd. There's a whole Sunday and small group series that was like set aside for it. And so,
For real?
Yeah. John Gray did a whole Sunday and so I think it's a fair question. And I know,
but they didn't do anything for Charlie.
No. And I just think I think it's a fair question, man.
Yeah.
And now I'm also not on some like Mark Driscoll stuff like leave a church off of one Sunday. I think that's encouraging spiritual immaturity.
Yeah.
But I also think that if people in your church are wondering that, it's very fair to ask that.
Yeah.
Only other thing I have to say is too, just like the world I want to live in someday is a world where Charlie and Stephen Furtick can go talk about that offline. Same thing with, and I know the Driscolls like I like them, but the way that he acted that, I think he missed a moment where it's like, hey, some of these pastors you're yelling at will probably just get on a call with you. So you're shouting this ambiguous kind of challenge instead of the way I see it is, this is something that I think that we really miss, especially in the evangelical world. Jesus left 11 very different dudes to run this church.
Yeah. That's good.
And then Matthias came in, and then you had a core of very different women, and then it just quickly grew. And I think Jesus's idea was that all of them were supposed to talk to each other and pull on each other and push them.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening right now is everyone's just, the apostolic figures are getting siloed out when I think they need to be coming together, even if it's not publicly. I'm not saying y'all have to do a podcast, but bro, we're getting killed out there because people they're going into their silos. When I walk in the authority God has given me as my kid's dad, that is loving to them. And if I act like I'm not an authority figure in their life, I think that actually is confusing to them and can lead them astray.
Yeah.
And so I just think that we need to figure out, like, I think there almost needs to be like a modern Council of Nicaea not on, the validity of scripture and the canonization of it, but rather on going like, these big dogs, pastors got to get in a room with each other and go, what are we doing, boys?
Yeah.
And they got to have it out.
Yeah.
And I know it's so idealistic, but I'm like, even if it happens with a fraction of pastors, and I would even, seems like that's what Josh Howardin is doing. He's getting a group of guys. But what I would want is, I would want there to be some plurality. I think we need a level of plurality, not in primary doctrine, but maybe even approach. I don't think people should support or listen to content creators who don't have a pastor.
I would say who aren't active in their local church.
And who aren't active in their local church.
Like, who's sending you?
Who's sending you? Who's covering you?
Who's shepherding you? Who has authority over you to tell you to stop?
And I think that if you're a Christian content creator, you should I think all of us can do better at just trying to just show love to our local church and our pastor.
Yeah.
Obviously, you got to watch about doxing things and certain of them, but like find ways. Honestly, someone who did that pretty well towards the end was Charlie Kirk. He presents he was pointing to, and I think that's very admirable.
Rob McCoy, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Shout out to Pastor Rob McCoy. Yeah.